Oftentimes, effective podcasting is less about what we do, and it's more about where we aim our focus. And in this episode, I'll be sharing one of the top tips when it comes to effectively growing your podcast. Hey, welcome to Impact Podcaster Academy. My name is Alec Casson, and I help podcasters create more impact and income online without them needing to go viral or rely on sponsors. So, when it comes to effective podcasting, at its core, it's about understanding your audience's perspective and their desires on a deeper level. And then with your content, you're actively creating ways to connect with them on a deeper level too. It's about being, such an addition in their lives that you will be missed if you're gone. Essentially, what you're doing is you're creating a community. Without community, you're missing half of the equation when it comes to podcasting effectively. Like, sure, you might be able to post content that allows for people to engage and, they'll like it. And you might be able to share your content everywhere in an attempt to increase traffic to your show. But without community, there's no reason for why people would even stick around with your podcast or even purchase anything from you. And that's just the cold truth. I'm sorry. Didn't mean to sound rude there. In fact, many podcasters, they face this issue online when it comes to driving traffic to their show. And the issue is that they're focused only on driving traffic to their show. And it sounds kind of a little counterintuitive. If I'm focused on driving traffic to my show, then, I should be able to increase the amount of traffic coming to my show. But this problem of going about it with that approach, it's like trying to aim at a bullseye in order to hit it. And if you do, if you're trying to hit a bullseye by aiming at the bullseye, you're just going to fall short. But let me explain for a second, because some of you who might be really good at shooting darts might be like, Alec, what in the world are you talking about? Well, so one summer I actually spent an entire week at my cousin's house in Florida, and my uncle, he is an avid darts player. And during my visit, I would, him and I, we would just hang out in the backyard, maybe drink a beer, throw some darts, and we'll just be talking, hanging out. And my gosh, this guy, he was so good that about 8 out of every 10 throws, shook, it would hit the bullseye. I'm like, dude, what in the world? But he basically lived in that backyard. He didn't actually live in it, but he would be out there throwing darts all the time. His form was solid. He knew exactly how to throw this dart in order to hit the mark wherever he was aiming. I, on the other hand, that was a totally different story. It was no matter how hard I tried to hit that bullseye, I would fall just short of hitting it. I tried throwing harder. I tried, turning my shoulders. I tried holding my hand up higher before I threw. Nothing worked. And my uncle he was like, all right, he saw I was getting a little bit frustrated, so he came to my aid, and he's like, hey, Alec, instead of trying to aim at the bullseye, how about you aim above the bullseye? And to my surprise, that actually worked. Not immediately, though, but it did in fact work. If instead of him coming over and being like, adjust the elbow at this leverage and then turn the wrist at that angle. No, he was just like, dude, it keeps falling under the thing. Why don't you just aim higher? And then it should just shunk right in the thing. And then, wow, it actually did it. So, again, for the avid dart players, I just got to mention that I am in no way trying to give advice when it comes to throwing darts. But I do hope that you can see where I'm going with this story. So by aiming to grow your audience, aiming at that, you're aiming too short. You're gonna miss the mark. So instead of hitting it, you're slightly off. You're not getting to the place you want it to. So instead, if you were to instead aim at building a community, you may find that the same amount of effort will actually lead to greater gains. This is demonstrated, I've seen this in CrossFit. Years ago, CrossFit was not that big of a thing. At least when I was in high school, CrossFit was not a thing. And then for those of you who haven't had the pleasure of being around someone who brags about doing CrossFit all the time, it's a form of really high intensity interval training that works on someone's cardiovascular system, their muscular system, promotes strength, endurance gains, and their progression, how they improve, it's based on beating their own personal records, which is actually kind of cool. I like that approach. But to put it simply, it's it's about pushing yourself so hard that you often feel like you're going to throw up, but you just keep going so you can do better than you did the week before. So, but anyway, CrossFit, although it's really not that different in its fitness approach from like all these other types of fitness programs, the thing that allowed for it to stick around was the fact that they weren't trying to sell people on working out. They were trying to sell people on a movement. And the people that were committed to that movement, they were part of a strong community. Now, most gyms, in fact, they have like really quick turnarounds in terms of gym members. People sign up on New Year's, and then after a few months, they never show up again until the next New Year's. But gyms that offer things like group coaching, statistically, not only do they see higher rates of retention, but they also see that members who work out in groups actually get greater results as well. So through the power of community and competition, people would stay longer and they would motivate each other to perform better. And CrossFit saw that and they capitalized on it. And shoot, you see like there's CrossFit things everywhere, like CrossFit games. They got movies and they got whole, social media channels devoted to just that. So you can see that, when it comes to like working out, it can be boring for a lot of people. There's nothing intrinsically exciting about it. And the same thing is true for podcasting. At its core, you're just hearing someone talk to you. And in most situations, if you were to just only listen to someone talking at you, you'd actively would probably avoid those types of people. But the reason why people keep coming back to things like a certain type of podcast or back to something like CrossFit, even something like why people continue to listen to Howard Stern or Joe Rogan, it's because they got a community. In fact, the entire internet culture, it's shifting more and more to this place where those who can provide connection and a sense of community with their audience are those who are going to be able to see the most success online. The internet, it used to be a place where those who flaunted things of like, oh yeah, look at me, I'm on top of the world, or, they're showing how much money they got or how successful they are. A lot of the times that influenced how successful someone would be online. But now it's a place where anyone with a smartphone and an authentic personality can gain like a really large following. And it's not that these influencers are necessarily better at social media. Rather, it's just that they're better at coming across as more authentic, which helps to form those communities. So in a world, where you can have Photoshop on your phone, or you can have filters be applied literally automatically. Like there's phones out there where you can take a photo, you don't need to edit it because it'll do it on its own. With all these things in the world, it's getting easier to hide behind a screen, and it's getting harder to find people who are just simply like being real, So, this is another reason, exactly, like another reason why someone like Joe Rogan or Howard Stern saw a lot of success. Despite people not liking them for how they say things, you can't deny the fact that they're just simply being authentic, which is way more attractive to people than trying to pose as something that they're not. Now, the idea here isn't to try and intentionally be rude or mean or anything like that. I doubt Howard Stern or Joe Rogan are intentionally trying to get people to be upset when it comes to them sharing their thoughts. However, the idea that I'm trying to get across is that you got to stand for something. You got to draw your line in the sand and tell people like what your actual thoughts are and what you believe in. And when you do this, oddly enough, people are going to have to choose in their mind whether they're going to follow you or just turn to someone else. And a lot of us think like, this idea, it's kind of frightening because you may not want to turn people away. But as the saying goes, if you stand for nothing, you fall for everything. And you better bet that, your podcast will fall in downloads if you try to appease everyone. So an example that I have with my own podcast and online ministry is that I like to make it clear that I believe it's possible to be successful online without needing to go viral and without needing to have a large audience. I also make it clear that, if you are working hard to provide a lot of value with your show and you're contributing a good amount of value into the world, you deserve to be compensated for that. You deserve to get paid for what you do. And people who hear that, they're going to experience one of three things. The first thing is that, they will hear what I say and they're going to stand by it confidently join me because, it triggers positive emotions, or they might be curious to learn more about maybe why I have these beliefs. Or the third thing is they're going to be, they'll completely disagree with me because it triggers negative emotions. They're going to be like, nope, I don't believe that. Screw you. And then they leave. That's totally fine. Like, people can believe what they want. But no matter what, by drawing my line in the sand, I'm triggering either curiosity or high levels of emotions. And when it comes to engagement online, the best thing you can do is create curiosity or evoke strong emotions. Online news companies, their articles have headlines that evoke feelings of fear, anger, or worry to get more engagement. And when they do this, studies have actually shown that they get way more engagement than headlines that have, positive phrases. And the same is true for headlines that evoke curiosity versus headlines that very clearly communicate what the core content is. This is why it feels like, news stations are always trying to share bad news, and it's why there's so many clickbaity titles, because quite frankly it works. It gets people to click and engage. However, when it comes to drawing your line in the sand with your beliefs, in relation to your brand, at least, you are ethically increasing your brand's ability to gain more followers and also increase the likelihood of those followers becoming fans. But don't intentionally try to piss people off. That's not what I'm trying to get at here. But at this point, I hope, throughout this entire episode, I was able to kind of sell you on the idea that aiming to build a community is the place you should be aiming when it comes to, increasing your audience. I also hope that I inspired you to be a bit more authentic when it comes to creating your content online. And I also hope that you feel a little bit more confident to just kind of share what your beliefs are to your community. And if you'd like to learn the actual steps that are required for building the foundation for a strong and loyal community, I'm actually going to be creating more episodes breaking that down. I'm going to be breaking down the exact steps that you need to follow. So, keep an eye out for that. And to wrap up this episode, I just want to say, you should know that aiming for growth is, you're simply aiming too short. Think of the bullseye. Instead, you got to focus on building a community. You're aiming above the bullseye there. And a strong community will lead to long-term success because basically, like the culture of the internet, it's shifting more and more to a place where those who can provide connection and a sense of community are those who are going to see the most success online. So I want to know, what are like 2 to 3 beliefs, or what are like 2 to 3 core convictions of yours that will help to, quote, draw your line in the sand for your show? Let me know. I'd be very curious to hear what that is. So thanks so much for listening. I really appreciate it. Share, like, subscribe, all that stuff. And I look forward to seeing you in the next episode.